Rich Miller, Rolla, Missouri. This is my 2006 Cannondale Judge FR bike check. Blast from the past. So this bike is a very classically designed example of a high single pivot with linkage. This bike has 220 millimeters of travel at the rear and 200 millimeters of travel at the front. The front suspension is handled by a 2008 Marzocchi 888 with the heavy-duty springs in it. It has a 20 millimeter axle and actually has plenty of clearance, as you can see, to run a 27.5 on it. Although this tire is a 26, this is a 2.8 size Maxxis DHF. So a really large tire and still has plenty of clearance on this. At the rear, suspension duties are handled by an Elka Stage 5 coilover shock with a 650-pound coil. The reason for the 650-pound coil is I am 235 pounds approximately fully kitted, and it really just does a good job of knowing that I'm not going to run through my full stroke all the time and supporting my weight. And with the linkage, again, it's very progressive. So it's just unbelievably comfortable at just about any situation, even if it's just a huge square hit. So back to the front of the bike here, you'll notice that on these Cannondales of this era, they were 1.5 inch head tubes. This has an adapter in it to fit the fork that we had for it. So this is a reducer by FSA that takes it down to 1 1/8 inches. It's also an FSA pig headset. Cockpit wise, you'll notice, well, this is kind of fork, kind of cockpit, but you'll notice that on this bike, I do have a conventional 4-bolt direct mount stem. It's a spike spoon, but you'll see that that is not the stock crown for a 2008 Marzocchi 888. This crown is actually from a later model. They're kind of hard to find like this. It had been skeletonized like that to reduce a little bit of weight. And so, you know, the stock crown came with only provisions for the Marzocchi proprietary 2-bolt direct mount stem. Those are just really limits your choices on stems. So I was really happy to find this crown and be able to move to a conventional 4-bolt. It really opened up my options. So again, that's a Spank Spoon direct mount stem. It's mated to Spank Spike 800 race bars. These are uncut. They're a full 800 millimeters. So nice and wide, lots of control out of these. I have a Z shifter and Saint brake set on this with Saint levers. The Z setup, even though it is a 10-speed, on this bike, it has actually been converted through the use of a 1-Up Components DH block to a 7-speed. So this bike is now set up with a 7-speed 1122. The Z, of course, has the clutch on it. I've added some ceramic and aluminum pulleys, ceramic bearing with aluminum pulleys on it for just a little bit of color coordination and bling. I really like personalizing my bikes. You'll notice the Jaguar cable is red as well. Coming on up, I have a KMC 10-speed chain. It's running through an E13 upper chain guide, lower chain guide, and bash guard that is tab mounted, direct mount. Goes into an Evolve DH by Raceface. It's a forged crank set, 175 millimeter, turning a Raceface narrow wide 34 tooth chain ring. That's all held together with a 83 millimeter spindle length, width bottom bracket. And the bottom bracket is also a Raceface product. The pedals on this bike are also by Spank. These are the spoon pedals. They have a nice concave shape to them, a nice low profile. a pretty good sized platform and plenty of nice aggressive pins on this. So it still allows you to move around a little bit on the bike, but is still a pretty aggressive bike nevertheless. Rear wheel duties on this bike right now are handled by a Sun S-type rim, coupled with the Kenda Navigal Sport. It's a John Tomac signature series. It's a 2.35. Gives a real nice pattern on this too. You can see it's very predictable. Lots of braking power. Lots of traction out of this. The hub on the rear is actually a Hadley hub, which are just super smooth, super high quality hub. Calipers on this bike are St. 4 piston, and that's a 203 millimeter rotor. I also run the 203 millimeter rotor up front as well, again with the St. 4 piston. So on a bike like this, you've got to be able to stop, and this certainly will stop you. So brings us to the saddle. The saddle is by Gusset, and it is the tartan model. I'm not gonna lie, I bought this saddle because it just fit the profile of the bike and I like the way it looked, but it's actually a really comfortable saddle and it's very durable as well. I've been very happy with it so far. One of the things I did want to draw your attention to, and I didn't mention earlier, was the Rev Grips Pro Series grips that I have on this bike. And actually I have them on a couple of my bikes. Soon, hopefully, we'll have them on all of my bikes. It's a just a really nice grip. You know, there's a little bit of movement in it, but you don't really feel it. You certainly don't feel that movement while you are while you're riding. It's something that I noticed right off the bat, though, with these. I have a wrist injury, and it kind of limits my comfort level on the bike and how long I can actually ride for. When I switched to these, I noticed immediately things just felt much smoother for me, and I didn't have that same fatigue level that I had had with conventional grips. A lot of people will say, oh, they're too difficult to install, they're $90, I'm not gonna pay that for a grip. But you know, they are definitely worth the price. If you have, particularly if you have an injury like me, I just can't imagine not putting a set of these on my bike, knowing that they're out there now. They're just really excellent, and they're well made. The grip itself is nice. I run mine on the softest setting, and those are the medium size grips. They have 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large. Just really comfortable. The seat post on this bike is a Pro Max seat post, and the clamp on the seat post is by Hershey Racing. So that's about everything I can think of on this bike. Again, this has been my 2006 Cannondale Judge FR. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.